Thank you so much. I'm so pumped to be here. You guys are my people, so I'm a little nervous, but we're gonna make it through this together. So, thank you for joining us. I want everybody to close their eyes for just a second. Imagine yourself 3 years from now. What's your ideal role in your company, in your life? What's the impact that you're having? How are you spending your time? Okay, hold that thought and open your eyes. We're often told that one of the best ways to get to where you're trying to go is by having a sponsor. Someone who can help you rise up, someone who can speak on your behalf when you're not there, recommend you for certain projects so you can progress more quickly and easily. But not all of us have a sponsor. So what do you do when you don't have this person to advocate for yourself? Can you do it on your own? Can you ascend the career ladder powerfully, quickly, and elegantly? I'm Shanea, Leven, and this is my family. Neither of my biological parents went to college, but at 16, I knew that I wanted to be a professional dancer. I wanted to go to Broadway and do ballet and whatever. But my parents said that I couldn't do that. So it was college or military school. And I picked college. But I had no other examples of what I wanted to do, so I was pretty aimless. I applied to college, and I got an early decision into my choice school. But my parents couldn't afford to send me, so I had to change my plan again. And I applied to the only school I could, April of my senior year of high school. And luckily, I did pretty okay in school, so I got in and picked a super general major. But this school wasn't easy. So about a year and a half in, my boyfriend got stationed in California, and I moved him. I decided to drop out and go with him. So for 6 years, without a college degree, I was still aimless and wasn't making much progress. So I was a temp, I was a receptionist, I was a data entry specialist, I worked at a marketing agency, I'd even delivered singing cookie telegrams to the crash. And then in 2013, something changed. Over the next 6 years, I had clear direction, and I made tremendous progress. So fast forward to 2019, and today I'm a senior director of product at Docker. And I've started my own web development company. I've helped millions of developers launch Android apps when I was at Google, and also work on the Google Assistant. I've launched dozens of products for companies like eBay and Cloudflare, and I've had the pleasure of leading some tremendous teams. So what changed? What made the difference? I became my own sponsor. I stopped waiting for someone to give me direction, and I started finding and opening my own doors. So it all started one summer when I thought that I had found my calling as an analyst. And my friend, she burst into our office, and she was like, she had a voicemail from a recruiter. And so she wanted to move to the Bay Area, and so she needed a job first. So I helped her rewrite her resume. 2 weeks after I help her, she comes in with a voicemail, and a recruiter says, "Oh, I've got the perfect job for you. Oh, and by the way, the company was Google," and I flipped my shiznit. I was like, what? Google is the mecca. It's like, it's one of this magical place that has this reputation, and only the most elite geniuses go. And I thought to myself, if she can do it, so can I. And that was the door that I needed. That was the one that I wanted to open. So I asked my friend, could I have the recruiter's number? So I could call him and see if there were any other opportunities. And then I stalk him. I call him 5 times. I send him countless emails, voicemails, until he finally called me back. So I worked with him over the next couple of months, applied to 4 different positions. I didn't get in immediately. And finally, I get the call. Like, you have a phone interview. And then I didn't end up going to the on-site interview. And I study every waking minute that I have. I researched 75 behavioral, analytical, and technical questions. I had a framework for how to answer questions that I didn't know how to have the answer to. I studied on breaks and 4 to 5 hours a night, and on my commutes. It was crazy. One of the questions that I get asked was, redesign our website. And I was like, I didn't think I did that well. So I literally brought a presentation to my on-site and here you go, this is how you redesign the website. And the point of this wasn't to be crazy, but it was just to be prepared. And so I got to know the recruiter over this process really well. So on Sunday night, he calls me from his personal cell phone number to tell me that I got the job. And this was my first taste of success, and I didn't want to let it go. So this was my very first messy process of a 3-step system that I've refined over time that consistently and seamlessly have helped me get to where I want to go without a sponsor. And those 3 things are know your terrain, know how to open doors, and know what to do when you run face first into a glass door. So step 1, know the terrain. So knowing the terrain is about how to take the future role that you want to have. Maybe it's the role that you were imagining at the beginning. And then ask yourself this question: what are the actual skills and people's perceptions of me that I need to have to get this role? So I'll give you an example. A year ago, I decided that I wanted to look for my next challenge. And I went from in real life stalking to LinkedIn stalking. I basically took 50 VP job descriptions and 50 VP profiles, and I literally analyzed every single part of it. I put all the requirements in a spreadsheet. This is my actual spreadsheet. And I wrote down all of those accomplishments, the words that people used who had those roles. And I checked off my experiences that I could speak to. And then I could clearly see where I had gaps. And then to find any additional gaps, I went on informational interviews with other senior directors, VPs from different companies. Side note, recommend you go on informational interviews every 6 months. It's a lot of work, but worth it. So this 2-pronged approach, informational interviews and LinkedIn stalking, I had a very clear understanding of the terrain and what I needed to do to get to where I wanted to go. So to fill in my gaps, I went to my boss and I said, I need projects in these specific skills. And then I came up with a personal growth plan. And if going to your boss isn't a possibility, you can go to a different department. You can take on a side project outside of work. For example, you can start something with an engineering student or partner with a nonprofit to get those skills. But fill them in any way that you can. And I found this process works at every level. I did this for every title switch for years. And it's simple. But I find that when we're not intentional in the ways that will serve us on our career journeys, we simply are waiting for X rather than proactively doing Y. So by knowing the terrain, you can also find shortcuts that help you get to where you want to go more quickly. So for example, most of us PMs, the perception is you should be technical. But what does that actually mean? I wasn't sure what the quickest way to get that technical label was. Should I go to a boot camp? Should I get a CS degree? Should I do the master's? So I studied. I did a ton of research. And turns out the fastest way is actually having the CS degree to be labeled technical. But who has time to go back to school for 4 years? None of us. So I did more research, and turns out you can get a second bachelor's degree if you already have a bachelor's degree. And problem is that California doesn't do second bachelor's degrees. So I did even more research and found out I can just get a second bachelor's degree from a different state and do it online. And then fast forward a year and a half, I will always have that label of CS degree, technical enough. It only took a couple more months longer than a boot camp. So step 2, knowing how to open the doors when you get there. So once you know the terrain, the next step is start opening doors for yourself. And the 2 most powerful keys is communication and confidence. So books have become total game changers for me to learn how to open doors, and particularly when figuring out how to communicate. We often take books for granted, but they really helped me with crucial skills. So I'm going to be showing a lot of books, so get ready. So 3 years ago, I had an awful manager. I felt lost with how to handle the situation, and my husband recommended that I read the book Crucial Conversations. Completely changed the game. I felt much better equipped to handle the difficult conversations and tough situations that they talked about in the keynote. This is how to do it. When I started receiving terrible and completely false feedback from a different manager, the book Thank You for Your Feedback became my savior. It taught me how to not only give powerful feedback, but how to receive it elegantly. When I experienced organ rejection, I read Master Your Next Move, which is a tactical follow-up to the first 90 days. This is actually the how-to, and it helps with giving solid advice for how to start on a new team, a new project, a new company at any time. And finally, just as important as your speaking skills, your written communication is also just as important. and right to the top is my go-to. Okay, take a photo. You guys got it? Okay. Now, communication skills have helped, but so has building my confidence. We often hear it's important to have confidence, but it took me a while to really understand what that means. So 3 years ago, I was on 2 different job interviews in the same day. One company told me I was super overqualified, and the other one was like, you're super underqualified. And my experience was the same. It was just my confidence. And in the first, I didn't want the job at all. So I hounded the head of product with all these really tough questions, and I was just super bold and just going for it. And in the next, I really wanted this job. And so I completely black out on a simple question in the interview. I know someone can really understand what it's like to black out. I'm what did I just do? And this is a big aha moment for me. I realized that confidence can make all the difference. And it was critical on my path to success. So after my second interview, I was determined to feel more confident, even in situations that terrify me, kind of like this one. So once again, I turned into books. And I read The Confidence Code. It helped me feel not guilty for being confident. And I learned to ask bold questions. So I go to a Women in Product event a couple of years ago where some female VPs of Facebook were speaking. We all know them. And I was determined to ask a bold question. So at the end, they call for questions. I raise my hand, and I get up in front of everybody, kind of in a room like this, and I go, Deblu, what are you doing to for people with unconventional backgrounds to get jobs at Facebook? And again, so nervous I black out. Had no idea that I actually asked it. The only reason I knew that I actually asked it was because a friend recorded me asking it. I do remember her being brilliant and poised, as you know Deblu is. And the point of all of this was that in front of 200 to 300 people, asking this question was a completely defining moment in my life. People came up to me and they're like, yeah, we're so happy for you. I was thinking the same thing. Thanks so much for asking that. And I was pumped. And I couldn't stop. So afterwards, you know how you gather around the speaker, and there's a group of 10 people asking normal post-conference talks, and they're questions and completely pointless about those how do you like Facebook? We all love Facebook, right? So I ask, and I go, may I ask you a bold question? Can I interview for you? And she goes, yeah, of course. And I'm like, what? Okay. And then I did, and it was great. And it was this most liberating thing because I really felt the power of being able to ask bold questions and ask for what you want. So if you aren't comfortable asking bold questions, I highly recommend that you just preface it with, can I ask you a bold question? And it usually takes the pressure off of you and helps the person on the opposite end get prepared. So I used it with Deb. And I still continue to use it to this day. So another example of this is at the end of every interview, literally every interview, I say, do you mind if I ask you a bold question? We've been talking for 30 or 45 minutes or so. Do you have any concerns with me in this role? And then they usually pause, and 60% of the people are like, no, you're good. Great. I'm like, sweet. And then the other 15%, more junior folks, they get a little caught off guard, but that's okay. And then the other 25% of the time, I've missed something. This is the feedback that we always email our interviewers with, that they can't actually respond to us. So just ask them at the end of the interview and get that feedback immediately. You fill in any gaps, and you really get better at interviewing. So now I'm going to tell you this life-changing secret. You ready? So only guys know this secret, so I'm going to share it with you. I was reading the Feminist Fight Club, and there's a section called What Would Josh Do? And basically, to paraphrase, yeah, it's a really great book. So basically, the chapter says, nobody actually knows what they're talking about. That guy who sounds super smart doesn't necessarily know what he's talking about, and he just says what he thinks is true at the time, and then he adjusts over time, right? So this is my husband, and he happens to be named Josh. So I go up to him, and I go, Josh, is this true? Do you just not know what you're talking about, and you're just making it up as you go? He goes, no, I don't know. I'm like, what? Why am I spending all this time trying to know the perfect thing to say? And And it was this liberating thing. It was another pivotal moment for me. So I have and still have I love this quote. So I have and still do have major imposter syndrome. And it was incredibly liberating for me to hear that most of us are at the end of the day are just kind of making it up as we go. We can't predict the future, but we can speak to our experiences. And it's important to not be afraid to communicate confidently your ideas in any way that you can, because your experience matters. So you know the lay of the land. You know how to unlock those doors and opportunities. What happens when you're on the journey and you run face first into a glass door? So I'm obsessed with Brené Brown. Anybody else? So Brené Brown says that when you're daring greatly, failure is inevitable. What's most important here is expectations. Expect things to go wrong so you aren't surprised when they do. You are going to make mistakes, and the people that you work with, they are going to make mistakes. So I took on a risky role. My worst case scenario happened. I failed, I got fired. I worked in really toxic work environments, but I've always tried to fail up. And in these situations, you always come back to the data. Speak to the data, speak to your accomplishments and what you've actually accomplished with confidence. So once again, books helped me out here. I read Daring Greatly and I read Rising Strong. Still obsessed with everything Brené Brown says. And I learned that when something goes wrong, how to separate my shame of that event from the actual event, how to write my feelings out, how to get honest about the story that I'm making up, and how to write new endings to my stories. What's also helped me here is talking things out with a couple key people in my life. So I mentioned my husband earlier, but this is my friend Sophia. She's also a PM, and every day we basically communicate on our commutes, and we talk about things, we vent, she knows what it's like, we give each other perspective, and we practice for job interviews, regardless of if we're interviewing or not. It's made such a huge difference to have someone who deeply understands PM life, and I recommend you use this conference to find that person for you. So 15 years ago, I was a temp and sort of a dork. Still a dork. And over the years, I've studied the product leader terrain and how to open doors and trying to rise strong when I failed. And it's made all the difference. So I share my story today with you because I'd like for you to quickly and easily and powerfully get to where you want to go. To have the impact that you have, that you'd like to have, especially like getting that idea that you wanted at the beginning of the talk. And my guess is that you could be much further in the next 3 years than you could ever realize. Thank you.